So we have 3 people responsible for being able to create what we just saw before us and figure out how this is going to work in a world where people are trying to bridge the Chinese animation marketplace and the US animation marketplace. So I just thought each of you could briefly talk about, just very briefly, the origins of the company, how it got started, where you are. So Harley, I'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. This is Harley. I started the company, 17 years ago. It's quite a bit of time, when I started. As you know, it is really my biggest hobby. I love animation, so I started this company. When I started, it was so hard at that time. It was basically the industry and the business at that time was not that, strong at the current time. So we shifted the business a little bit to do more like service work for different kind of clients around the world and start trying to, survive. But we grow, during the past years, and around like 4 years ago, we started to go back to more like focusing on the animation industry, from the game business. We started the project with DreamWorks. At that time, we got the How to Train Your Dragon, the TV series projects. This is how we really start to expand our studio into the the animation area. Yeah. So after several years of effort, we have grown the studio into the largest CGI house in China right now with 1,300 people totally. So we have, the majority of our work is still, we're trying to make our own content. So we started a studio here in Culver City 2 years ago and started to develop content. So we put out most of our effort here to do the creative side, on the story development things. But the majority of production force is back in our hometown, Nanjing, which is close to Shanghai. So our goal of the company is to, we are trying to build a company as of the top quality content creator, so that we can create content not only for the Chinese market, but for the global market. Yeah.
Bob?
Well, Alpha Animation is a new division, as you mentioned, that's part of the larger Alpha Group. The Alpha Group is one of the leading entertainment companies in China and has its roots as a toy company. It's 23 years old at this point and is a publicly listed company, one of the largest, as I mentioned, in China. So we're brand new, and we're small. We're based in Los Angeles. We're about 15 people right now, and the Alpha Group itself is numbering over 7,000.
Oriental DreamWorks is a joint venture between DreamWorks, which is based here, obviously, in LA, and a group of Chinese companies, including China Media Capital. And we've been around about 3 years. The first big project was actually the co-production on Kung Fu Panda that we just showed you a little bit of, and we just started production on our next big movie there. And the goal really is to develop and produce movies out of China that are for the global audience. So we're in that space.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about the business model, the production model, the budget range for the projects that you're that you anticipate getting involved with. Just generally how you see your business evolving in the very near term. I'll start in reverse, Melissa.
Okay. We're starting with, as I mentioned, our first, completely OTW-owned project right now. And that's a big budget movie for a global audience. I think our overall plan is to really look at each movie as an individual project and to find the right budget and production plan for that specific movie. So we don't have kind of an animation template that we're working with. We're really trying to be a little bit more flexible and a little bit more almost a live action model in that sense. We have a crew that can grow or shrink depending on the needs of the movie. We also have, access to a lot of, specific kind of strong resources to help us.
So it's not all about big budget projects. It can be smaller budgeted projects.
I think we're really, it's early days for us, but we are looking at a lot of different range of budgets and approaches to making the movies.
Also for different medium, in other words, is it for feature films, but you also would consider producing content for the web or content for other initial medium of exploitation?
We're really focused on feature films right now. We're really focused on developing, powerful IP from China and great stories that come out of China, have roots in China, that we think can work globally. And so that's our primary focus right now. Someday, maybe, but at the moment, it's really features.
Bob, for Alpha, is it similar, different?
It's a little bit different. So for us, we're going to be based in Los Angeles for all the idea development, all the pre-production, story and design work will happen here locally. And then we'll work to produce the movie somewhere around the world. That can be anywhere, just depending on what the right fit capability of the producing studios are and our budget. We'll produce movies up to $80 million US dollars. We'll try to compete in the global stage.
Harley, what about your model?
Yeah, so actually we're doing a little bit different things. Of course, the content that we're developing here is mostly for the family audience. So it's around 30 to 40 million US dollars budget. And we also have another pipeline there. We're developing content for more photoreal kind of CGI feature films. So we have just released a movie recently, October 1st, both in China and also US. That is also kind of like this range, around like 30 million US dollar range. But that is mostly for the Chinese market. Yeah, but for the family content, we are looking for, to show it, everywhere around the world.
And are you all focused on family content in the sense that none of you would consider more adult fare in terms of something that speaks to an older audience, a dark comic book that could be animated, or it's all family?
I'd say for us, it's likely to be an all-audience a market that we're trying to hit. Most of that is a family market, although I think there's always opportunities based on what the creative is to try to hit a slightly different demographic. I don't see us doing anything that's particularly R-rated or sort of ventures into those areas. But I do think, for example, we have a company inside of Alpha called U17.com, which is a very strong online comic book company, and there may be stories that come out of that are appropriate for the animation audience that skew a little bit older. So I think primarily we'll be in the family market and competing, with the major players.
Yeah, I think we're very much in the family market as well, but conscious of the importance of having sort of an older teen audience and even kind of an audience in the young 20s, particularly in China, that kind of access the movies and enjoy the movies. I think we're seeing a lot of that with the U.S. movies, particularly in animation that are successful in China. They really got beyond just the core family and reached a broader audience. So we're really looking at that, which I think is important globally.
Yeah, I think we're doing the same thing. The majority of our work is still family oriented, but if you look at the movie that we recently released, it's called Lord. It's more for old, a little bit old.
Older skewing.
Yes, old, like for teenagers. So it's based on a novel book. It's not a family kind of oriented. It's more for adults. Yeah.
Got it. I mean, in a very highly competitive environment, there are a number of studios, there are a number of companies that are housed at studios like Illumination, independent companies. I think the key, everyone says they look for great projects, but how do you find those great projects? What is your particular approach to development and finding those needles in the haystack, so to speak? Harley, what's your development approach?
I think, we started our company here 2 years ago. I mean, the main focus area is trying to create original ideas and also develop them. I think, why we come here is because, we really look for, we're looking for, working with the best talent here. Because we still believe the storytelling skills here and the original ideas is better here. But of course, we have a lot of artists and the creators that back in China, they have great ideas. But when we trying to develop them into some real product, I still believe we need to work with talents here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think a great idea can basically come from anywhere, but I think sort of paramount to that is having great talent within the company, both on the creative, filmmaking side as well as the creative leadership on the executive side of the company. With that experience comes a lot of relationships within the business that we can tap into and have ideas come to us. We'd also be looking for, to develop things internally that come from our own group. And of course, we have a very strong company behind us that has a lot of great internal IP, both on the consumer product side as well as the TV animation side of things. And we'll look to the world of publications and things like that. So really, we're looking everywhere for ideas, and it's up to us to try to assess what are the great ones. We'll adopt a proven process that I think a lot of the great animation studios are using today. So we'll be working through a script process. We'll rely on that to start to hone those ideas. And then we'll go through, like I said, a typical story development process that I think has been proven out by the major studios, starting with Disney. So we'll honor that process and try to work the idea into a great movie.
I feel like we're doing something very unique, actually, at OTW right now that I'm really excited about and proud of, which is we have our full development team based in Shanghai. So we have 6 development executives, all based in China, that are really immersed in the culture there. 3 of our executives are actually Chinese Americans who have moved to China to be a part of what we're doing, and then we have 3 executives that are Chinese natives. And I've been in a lot of development rooms for a lot of years in the movie business, longer than I want to say. And the most unique, interesting conversations are coming out of this group of people. The projects and the ideas and the kinds of IP and the creativity with which they're solving problems is, for me, really refreshing. And I think that that's going to, hopefully, turn into projects that are exciting and have a unique voice, but are also have a strong global appeal and a kind of a storytelling that is accessible worldwide. And we're doing a lot of unique things. We have a kind of a writer's room where we have found some very talented up-and-coming writers from China that we're working with on a day-to-day basis to kind of grow their storytelling chops. We did a project last year, we'll be doing it again this year, which is sort of a Chinese filmmaking brain trust. Actually, Janet was there with us last year, where we got a group of really smart, talented Chinese or Chinese American filmmakers together and really brainstormed, what are the ideas? What are the stories that haven't been tapped into? What are some of the areas that we wish we could exploit? And in fact, came up with a project that Janet came up with that's in development now from a very top Hollywood writer is writing that. So we're really trying to crack the story code that will allow us to really find stories that are rooted in something more intangible in China than just, it's a remake of a myth or something, but kind of have a spirit of what's happening there right now, which is a very vibrant young community. And so we're bringing stories out of that. We're developing them with very experienced writers here in Hollywood to try to find what does it mean to be a co-production.
We were talking earlier about ratios, in other words, how many projects you'll develop to those that actually will forward to progress to production. Are you following the same studio model in Shanghai as you do here in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean, we have about 15 projects in development right now. I've been working with the studio for about 6 months, so we're very aggressively finding and developing and hiring writers because we know that it is a long, slow process, as you guys all know. And in order to really have projects that we're excited about, we want to make sure that we're, really investing heavily in that area. And so
So it might be the 1 out of the 15.
Maybe 1 out of 15, yeah, exactly. So
what about your ratios, Bob?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. Yeah. Maybe like a 10-to-1 ratio, for projects in development to what we think will be making it to the screen. I think, as Melissa was saying, there's a number of things you start off to do. Not all of them work out. So I think the position you don't really want to find yourself in is having a few things to choose from and needing to push those to market. So hopefully, if we develop a number of different ideas, at least one of them will pop up for us as the movie to go make as the next film, and we'll have choices. So investing in development is a really major part of being successful in the feature animation marketplace. And the big studios do it, and they put quite a bit of investment into that area. And they chase a number of different ideas with different pieces of talent behind them.
And are you also following a similar hybrid model where basically the talent or the sources of these projects would be both from this side as well as locally in China?
Yeah, as I sort of mentioned, a good idea can come from anywhere. So I don't think we sit there and discriminate as to where it could come from. We'll look everywhere and try to turn over every rock, and whatever makes sense for us is the one that we're going to go pursue.
I think we're doing a little bit different. Currently we are developing around 10 different projects. But if we're talking about the ratio, I would say 1/3 will be some number that we're targeting, because we're not a big studio kind of. So we're trying to be more put more effort before we decided if we want to do it. Yeah, but when we decided, when we put it in our list, let's say when we developed the Temp Rod, we decided that this is the Temp project that we're developing. We hope that we can hit 1/3. Yeah.
Got it. So oftentimes when people talk about the competitive landscape in animation, I've heard it said that people think of animation as more quote unquote branded, in the sense that a live action film, an audience member might come out and they have no idea whether they just saw a Sony distributed film, a Warner distributed film. You ask them, they don't know. But yet with animation, there are some big brands like the company that you work for, Melissa, that parents sort of trust when they're looking for that family experience. There's a quality, there's a brand. I guess I would ask, I think you would probably say that's true, perhaps, or maybe not.
True.
But I'm curious, first of all, do you agree with that notion, that there is more branding in animation than there is in live action film?
I mean, obviously Disney is one of the strongest brands in the world, and that you can certainly say that they started that whole idea of branding, and they did it around their animated movies, and then Pixar, and hopefully DreamWorks now, and Illumination. That is sort of definitely a trend. I think for us in China in particular, DreamWorks is a very strong brand in China, and that absolutely makes it an interesting place for us to be doing business right now.
So for both of you, Harley and Bob, given that you may have a brand in China,
Right.
how are you looking to compete with that?
I will, to answer your question, I do think it is a branded industry. I think the brand carries a strong connotation to it. It's kind of like a good housekeeping seal of approval in some sense for what animation promises to the family market. Having worked at a big company like Disney, clearly you can see the effects of the name Disney on films. In fact, I work on a movie, Romeo and Juliet, that you mentioned at the top, that came out through Touchstone Pictures for various reasons. We speculate that had the movie carried the Disney name on it, especially internationally, we probably would have done about 50% more business. It would be interesting to experiment one day to see if you took a movie from an independent but slapped the Pixar label on it, how much more business it would do just because of the brand. So I think that is true. That said, I think you can create a brand, and we've recently seen Illumination pretty much come from nowhere to be one of the powerhouses today in the industry. So that is definitely our challenge. I can argue, on the other hand, though, that sometimes the brand can be a detriment, and that happened to us also at Disney. We went through a decade of films that were starting to get a bit patterned, I think, and sort of the heroine with the "I Want" song, the lovable sidekick, and that sort of thing. And we made a conscious decision at that time to move away from that and get into more sort of action-adventure films like Atlantis and Treasure Planet, which I think in the past, or in hindsight, proves to be a mistake, because perhaps it didn't deliver on what the brand was and what people were used to. So I think when it starts to become an expectation, it can actually harm you. I think when you can keep it fresh and it stands for quality, it stands for level of filmmaking and talent that you bring to the table, then I think it absolutely is powerful.
Actually, I agree with that. I think that the brand is so important to the Chinese market. I think one of the things for the animation industry in China is that we don't have a Chinese local brand yet, so that the audience will understand. The brand will give us a quality animations and good stories. So I think that when we look at the successful animation movies in China, it's always there is a company behind that, but most of the audience doesn't know who are those guys. I mean, they don't know the animation company, so there is no brand. So the problem for that, that is always kind of you will have a success project, but you will never have a success company. So that is harming the industry because, when the audience, there are many low quality and bad story like animation in the movie market. So people kind of like a little bit uncertain which one is, will give us the quality that we want. So I think it is definitely the problem that we need to figure it out. Like Original Force, we're trying to build a model that we can continue to provide a market like best quality animations and good stories, so that people can understand and people can recognize this brand. I think that we're, I believe it will be at least the key to Original Force.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you make, Harley, because I was just looking it up the other day, but 2012, there were about 100 animated movies released in China. This year, there'll be about 175. So you're seeing just so many movies released right now in China that the ability to distinguish your film from everything else that's out there is really important.
Yeah.
To sort of finding what that is, whether it's casting or branding or marketing, but it's quite a sea of movies right now.
So given that there is a brand component to it, particularly for Alpha and for Original Force, are there ways that you're looking, other than the scale of your companies, are there other ways that you're looking to either differentiate yourselves from the major studios, from the world that Melissa is in, or is differentiation not the goal, and maybe the goal is to try and emulate more than differentiate?
Yeah, I would say on the emulation side of things, it comes down sometimes simply to just make a great film. It sounds, simple and sort of trite, but I guess that is really the answer. In our sense, we will differentiate maybe in the way that we actually go about making these movies, and some of that is the same, and some of it's different. So we'll focus on top talent, which I think is the same, great storytelling, which I think is the same, but the way that we produce the movie, the price point that we produce it at, will be a little bit different. And in our sort of unique situation with Alpha, we have a very strong consumer products background to our company, starting as a toy company. So I think from a creative standpoint, we'll look to really focus on some things that have strong consumer products potential in the marketplace, and that might be a little bit different than the others.
Yeah, I think, as Original Force started as a production company, so we kind of like known as our, the production, like the quality of images. And I think it is also one thing good to us, because, several years ago, we released a trailer, it's called Asura. And when we released that Chinese audience started to realize, okay, there is a Chinese company that you can really do high-quality animations. I think they help us a lot to brand our name as a high-quality production house. So after we released our recent movie in China, it's also kind of, we got a lot of recognition from the audience that they kind of like when they saw that, the credit, when they saw most of the people, they are Chinese people, they are Chinese artists. They're kind of like amazed, and they believe, in the future there are going to be some really good animation, good content from this company. So I think we're really trying to kind of shape our studio as a very local studio. We are, of course, we're having business here in Hollywood, but we are still very Chinese company.
So you all have mentioned the talent, and it's obviously you're representative of a larger pool of competitors. So how do you go about attracting the top talent? What is the secret in terms of recruiting and identifying so that you get the team that you're looking for?
Well, we're, obviously affiliated with DreamWorks, but we're an independent company as well, and we're Oriental DreamWorks. So from that standpoint, I think people still have the question, what is that? And how is that different? Is it better or worse, more creative freedom, less creative freedom? What does that mean? So I think we do really have to kind of reach out to people and explain what we're about and what we're doing, and why what we are doing is, not exactly what DreamWorks is doing, and what it means to be Oriental DreamWorks. And then really for us, it comes down to...
So what does that mean? When you're trying, specifically when you're looking at that new piece of talent that you want, what does it mean to say Oriental DreamWorks is different?
Well, it's a very interesting hybrid, because you have the backing of a massive animation studio, and the talent base of a massive animation studio. And I think for us, you have the kind of independence that you get with a young, scrappy, new animation studio. So there's a couple hundred people in Shanghai really pushing the boundaries creatively and having a lot of fun and building a studio from scratch. And there's a sort of kind of a fun entrepreneurial aspect to making a film with us that is different than making a film at a giant company like DreamWorks. I think for us, what distinguishes us from a lot of other players in the Chinese market right now is that we can tap into that expertise. So if we get into, we need technical help, or we need creative help, or we just need, to kind of bridge something that is not easy to bridge right now, we can rely on the folks at DreamWorks. So it's a little bit of a safety net. In a somewhat uncertain new market. Yeah, exactly. The backbone is available at all times. So I think we're giving people a unique opportunity there. And then at the end of the day, for all of these projects, it's just about the quality of the material. Either people spark to it or they don't. I haven't had anybody not want to work with us because we're Oriental DreamWorks. It's really always about the material.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with most of what she said. I think in some cases, for a company like Alpha, we're brand new, and everybody's going to be looking at us to say, who are those guys and what are they about and how are they going to go do it. I think, as I mentioned earlier, starting with great leadership at the top is a really important thing. It's having relationships out there to try to attract talent. It's to try to sort of speak them through, how we work and operate that's different from the major studios. As Melissa mentioned, having the entrepreneurial environment is really important to a lot of these folks. Some of these companies have gotten so large and so layered that it's really hard to do anything different, and it's hard to get back to that pure feeling of filmmaking. So I think we offer that as a startup company. We can be competitive on the wage scale as well. And in many cases, what we're offering is opportunity for people. In some of these large structured companies, there's quite a bit of wait time until you can get to your film. If you're a director, for example, you may have 7 films in front of you if you're at Disney, and it's going to take 10 years for you to make your movie. So I think we can offer filmmakers something quicker, sort of get to the heart of what they do as a filmmaker, which is to make films and not to wait. And that sort of philosophy carries down to many levels of the organization where there's incredible talent that may feel stifled, and not having the opportunity. So as a startup, we can offer people immediate opportunity and compete in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I think we are doing the same thing. When we come here to Hollywood, we started our own company in Culver City. We are also a startup company. Startup company. It's small. It's a small team. It's not a big team, so everything is more efficient. And the other thing is, I come from more like a production background, so I like to talk to people, to talk to the talent, and share our view with them. Because we're trying to do something different. We are not a big studio. We're trying to compete in this market, so we can bring more opportunities, to even young talent. We are brave enough to give those opportunities to those maybe first-time directors. We're trying to do things differently, because we want to be more efficient but still keep the creative force. And I think the other thing is we really animation house have a long history. We are doing things step by step. During the past 17 years, we have the same goal, have the same target, and we prove ourselves that we can get it. If we can, just stick to it, and we can achieve. And also, we are backed up by great investors and partners, so that we can keep the business more solid and target for long term. It's not for short term. So we want to share that with talent here to let them know that we understand this business need time and need patience. So we're going to invest into it.
I think, Bob, you mentioned something earlier logistically just about that. In other words, the notion of relocation and having a team relocate to China, how realistic that is, and what you do about the challenges of whether people want to, uproot their families and move, and so what you may be providing in terms of how you structure something.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think sort of as you mentioned with the branding question, Animation operates a little bit differently than live action film, which is a lot more nomadic and gypsy sort of in its nature. I think people tend to not so much work on movies in animation, but they work for companies. And they look to make a home. And we have to remember that animation is a long haul. It takes 3+ years to go make a film. So to ask somebody to sort of pick up their life, the lives of their families, and go somewhere else is quite an ask in many cases. And when you multiply that across, an entire crew, it's almost impossible on some level. I've done it before with Romeo and Juliet. We had a team that was creatively in London, and we moved the entire team to Toronto for the production. And I felt like it was a unique opportunity that would probably never happen again. So our model is to, like I said, is to sort of do all the development and pre-production work here in Los Angeles, tap into the top talent that's here in town, and not really ask them to move, and then be able to work through technology and other ways in a long-distance kind of fashion. And I think it can really work.
Does that create other challenges, Melissa? You had that look on your face.
No, I was just thinking, well, it's two things that I think we're trying to do. One is we're trying to build the talent in China, and that's something that we're actually very consciously dedicated to. And so, we're tapping into the resources and the people we have at DreamWorks, and we are talking to people and able to get a lot of people to move over, maybe not for the full period of time, but for long enough to kind of maybe train some of the local talent and help grow some of the local talent so that feature expertise can be available there. And I think that's you talk about the long game, that is the long haul, and that is, I think, our intention long term is to see some of that knowledge and some of that ability shared with what is a very eager, very excited, up-and-coming animation community in China right now. I've never seen anything like it. The number of kids going to animation school right now, the number of kids studying abroad animation. The average age in our studio right now is 30. You have a very excited generation right now, and so we're really focused on that. I moved to China. I picked up my family and I moved to China. I live in Shanghai now, and my daughter goes to high school in Shanghai, and the reason that I did that is because I think it's a really exciting time for animation in China. I don't think you've seen a industry sort of blossoming like this is, and as quickly as this is, and as vibrantly as this is, certainly in my lifetime. There's something really great happening there. So I encourage everybody to move to China, do animation.
Do you think that language is less of a barrier with animation? As we saw the clip, it was very easily to digitally manipulate, and I couldn't choose whether the Mandarin was blue or the Mandarin was red, but it's obviously much easier to look at all the work that went into that scene and see that with a little bit of digital manipulation, you had the different languages. Does that mean that there's potentially less of a barrier to a global success in animation?
100%. I think that's why we're all here. I think that's why you're seeing what's happening in animation happening in China right now. With a live action movie, it's quickly a foreign movie, right? So it's in Mandarin or Cantonese and would be dubbed. I think in animation, throughout the history of animation, certainly in the last 20, 30 years, animation has been a medium that has allowed audiences to go into exotic, unusual, interesting places, from The Lion King to such a rich history. And so I think the audience is ready to go into a new environment in animation. And the dubbing is obviously a lot easier, but I think people are more open-minded about seeing different kinds of people in different kinds of places in animation.
Yeah, I'd have to concur with that. I think animation's proven to be a global product. Probably just the nature of it and the types of stories, the worlds, the characters. We were able to tell stories, for example, with animals, and you don't necessarily do that in live action film. So that translates really easily. And I think as long as it's not sort of too culturally specific, then I think you have a really great chance to have a global export.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Does it also provide more opportunities for more diverse casting because all you're dealing with is voiceover and therefore the persona not on screen? So does that provide also that opportunity as well?
Yeah, I think that's, it was interesting. I was listening to the end of John's conversation earlier, and he was talking about casting for a Chinese movie featuring Chinese cast and the challenge of, okay, what are the rules for that? Which I think
they
is
don't
something...
have to be handsome.
Yes, they don't have to be handsome, so that's the good news. But you sort of look at where is the cultural sensitivity. So if you have Chinese characters, how do you want to cast that? How do you want to cast that for a global audience? How do you want to cast that in China? And so we're definitely, I think, we're all looking at the same talent pool right now. Yeah. And I think that's going to be a great opportunity. I think it's going to be really amazing for a lot of actors that will, have some really great roles.
Just for each of you, what do you think your single greatest challenge is in having undertaken this, whether it's a personal challenge or a corporate challenge? What do you think is the hardest thing for you in having undertaken this project?
Oh, what a question. I would say, starting up a company from scratch is a really difficult challenge, especially in this industry where there's some really entrenched and strong players, attracting talent. And then having, from a company perspective, having the patience to stay with this business. I think Harley mentioned earlier, we're not making films as much as we're building companies. And the successful companies have really taken a patient approach to it. They stayed with it through sort of the ups and downs, and they build really powerful animation companies. For us, to be in that position one day, we'll have to exhibit the same kind of patience and be able to attract the same kind of talent. So I think patience and talent are probably the two biggest factors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. We need patience because it costs money, it costs time. You need several years to build some good movie. But there's not only the ideas, you need to deliver. I think one of the challenge for the Chinese animation industry is that there's not many places that they can deliver the final quality. So I think it is also one of the challenge that we're all facing. So this is why we kept put a lot of effort into building up the company. We have a lot of people. We need to deliver quality. Find good talents is also another challenge, even for for animation. To find good animators in China is always our biggest challenge. Yeah. So I think on the creative side, definitely we have a lot of challenges. On the production side, it's also have a lot of challenges. For me personally, I think the other challenge is as we come here and we're working with American people, so to understand the culture and it's a bit different mindset. We're still learning it.
Yeah, I think that cross-cultural thing is really important, and I think that as we learn to kind of communicate better between China and the U.S. in terms of the filmmaking communities and how they're going to evolve, I think we'll see very rich ideas come out of that. But we're just at the beginning of that. I think the other thing that we definitely find as a challenge is that here there are lots of people who've been doing animation for 20 or 30 years. I think at DreamWorks, almost everyone I can think of has been there, for at least 15 years. And the industry just isn't that old in China right now. It's a much newer industry, and so you don't have that kind of wealth of senior talent. Mm-hmm. A lot of really, really bright, amazing artists. I mean, there's such a rich history of visual art in China, 5,000 years of incredible art, and that visual art is very strong, but specific, well-trained senior animation talent is obviously the area where it's just going to, again, patience. It's going to take 20 years to get people who've been doing that for 20 years. So everybody has to be sort of willing to let that grow in a natural way and not rush the process.
Yeah.
So I see that the clock has gone in the red, which is basically the cue. There might be room left for one or two questions from the audience. So if anybody has a question, I see Jonathan right there. Nope.
I can speak loud enough.
Go ahead.
Everybody, you guys. Thanks very much. Really illuminating conversation. Last week in Shanghai, the local government made noise about enforcing a regulation that would inhibit foreign curriculum in high schools. And you've got a daughter there in high school in Shanghai. There's some fear about foreign influence in education. These are the audience for your movies, the kids. How do you work in a medium like animation when there's fear about foreign education influence going on in the press? I know that the word dream is in your company's name, and so everybody knows that you guys are all dreamers, and that's a great thing. But there are actual realities on the ground. Like, how do you get over that hump in discussion in a story meeting? Like, what's going to work, what's not?
I think what we're trying to do is develop stories that are both timeless and universal. And so we tend not to get too focused on the current political climate. I mean, I think a good example is a movie, Crudes, which DreamWorks did, that was a big hit in China. And when I talk to people about that movie and why they love it, they say because that family is such a Chinese family, that grandmother is so Chinese, that relationship between that daughter who's trying to gain her independence and that father who's trying to keep her at home is so Chinese. And it makes me smile because, of course, it is so Chinese. It's also so American. It's also so Russian. And I think what we're trying to do is tell stories that are universal. And when you do, I think you cross all of those boundaries, and the politics aren't really so specific. It's about touching kind of a human chord in that way. And so that's what we're trying to do. And hopefully that allows us a lot of creative freedom.
Any other questions? I see someone over there.
My name is Mandy, and I'm from USC, and I'm also from Nanjing. So my question is, as I noticed that in the past, the original force has mainly focused on animations only, but recently you've also engaged in movies of other genres, such as like 绝技. You also designed the characters and the CG effects of this movie. So my question is that a blurring boundary between the reality films and the animations? And whether Original Force or other such companies will develop or put more efforts in such a kind of new combination. And another question is how to create or develop a CG effect movie with more Chinese specialities.
Okay, so you are talking about a movie that we just released recently.
Yeah.
So basically, that is a fully animation movie. So I would say it is not an effects movie. It's a fully animation movie. So to us, to Original Force, because we are animation house, we thought it is still animation, though it is more like a photoreal kind of style. But on the pipeline-wise, on the production-wise, I still believe it is animation. It's not an effects movie, and even not a hybrid one. Yeah. So of course, we're trying to do more family content, family-oriented content, but we are also trying to do this kind of a movie. We still believe there is a big market in China. So, I'm not so sure if we're going to do live action and with the effects. We are now only focusing on animation.